Marvel is getting ready to bring Ultron back in the upcoming Vision Quest show on Disney+, but that's not even the biggest surprise floating around. The buzz right now is that another character could be making an appearance, and it's none other than Darkhawk, a name that longtime comic fans will instantly recognize. Darkhawk isn't just some random pick either. There are even rumors suggesting he might connect to Spider-Man Brand New Day because of his comic history. And the wildest part is that he was almost included in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That decision still raises eyebrows, but Marvel later hinted that the reason he wasn't used might be tied to a much bigger plan. They may want Darkhawk around as a way to introduce one of the X-Men's most important foes into the MCU. So, let's break down who Darkhawk is, why Marvel passed on him before, and why now feels like his moment. First things first, let's talk about the man behind the suit. Darkhawk's real name is Christopher Powell. He grew up in New York with a mom who worked as a district attorney and a dad who was a police officer, so he had a strong sense of justice running through his family. He admired them both, but his life took a sharp turn one night when responsibility got the better of him. His parents had to work, and Chris was left watching over his younger twin brothers. They were only 11, but Chris let himself get persuaded by a couple of his teenage friends to leave the kids alone for a bit. Of course, this turned into a disaster. When Chris came back home, his mom was in a panic because the twins were gone. Chris set out to track them down and ended up at an abandoned amusement park not far from their house. While there, he stumbled on something that changed his life forever. But before that discovery, he witnessed something heartbreaking: his dad taking a bribe from a mob boss. Seeing this rocked Chris's world because he had always believed his father was one of the good guys. As he tried to get his brothers out of there, he found an odd-looking amulet. Instinctively, he grabbed it, and suddenly he was transformed into a suit of sleek, powerful armor. Using this new form, he was able to fight off the mob's henchmen. That moment set the tone for the rest of his life. With his father gone and his family reeling from the fallout, Chris wrestled with whether he should use this new power. Eventually, he decided that he had to do something good with it, and that's when Darkhawk was born. He took the name after overhearing an old man mention it, and it stuck. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. The amulet didn't just give Chris some fancy armor. When he transformed, his body was actually swapped out with an android body that existed in a place called null space. His physical body went into stasis, while his consciousness took control of the Darkhawk form. The cool part? Every time he transformed back, the android armor repaired itself, meaning Chris could take damage without worrying about carrying it over to his human body. His powers were no joke either. Superhuman strength, durability, retractable glider wings, the ability to survive in space, force fields, energy blasts, and even infrared vision. It was like the ultimate superhero starter pack. Darkhawk didn't waste time getting involved with other heroes either. Early on, he teamed up with Spider-Man to take down the Hobgoblin, which earned him credibility right away. From there, he crossed paths with the New Warriors and often joined forces with them. He also fought alongside Daredevil, Ghost Rider, Moon Knight, and others. His rogues gallery wasn't light either. He faced off against Venom, the Secret Empire, and even the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. For a while, he was a reserve member of the West Coast Avengers, proving he wasn't just a lone wolf but could also play on a team. But the power of the amulet came with its struggles. After years of fighting crime, Chris started to realize that the amulet was taking a toll on him. He even joined a support group called the Loners, made up of other ex-teen superheroes who were trying to recover from their addiction to power. He swore off becoming Darkhawk again, but as you might guess, that vow didn't last long. When Ultron posed a threat, Chris was forced to transform and ended up blasting Ultron to pieces with his amulet. Afterward, Spider-Woman convinced him to embrace his role as Darkhawk once more, and he continued his hero career. So Darkhawk became this fascinating mix of street-level hero and cosmic adventurer, and over time, he expanded beyond his New York roots. At one point, he even drifted into Marvel's cosmic stories, getting involved with events like War of Kings and meeting the Guardians of the Galaxy. This is one of the reasons fans were disappointed when he didn't show up in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Director James Gunn had apparently thought about including him, but in the end, he left him out without explaining why. Many now believe it's because Marvel wanted to save him for a bigger introduction later. That makes sense because Darkhawk has ties to the Shi'ar, one of the most influential cosmic empires in Marvel Comics. The Shi'ar are best known as X-Men foes, but they're also directly tied to Darkhawk's armor, since his amulet came from their technology. Now that the X-Men are officially on their way into the MCU, it feels inevitable that the Shi'ar will eventually appear. If so, Darkhawk could be the perfect entry point to bring them into the story. Even though Marvel skipped him in the Guardians movies, there's still plenty of opportunity. Rumors of a Nova project continue to float around, and that would be another natural place to introduce Darkhawk. What's cool about Darkhawk is how much he has evolved over the years. When he first appeared in the 1990s, he was seen as part of that grim and gritty wave of teenage heroes. But unlike some of his peers, he's managed to survive beyond that era. Writers kept finding new angles for him, from his struggles with power addiction to his battles in space. He even found a role with newer generations of heroes, appearing in The Runaways and working with the Loners before being pulled back into bigger cosmic events. Now, Marvel is officially putting him on the roster of a new Guardians of the Galaxy comic series, written by Dan Abnett and Jonathan Hickman, with art by Corey Smith. This lineup will give Darkhawk another chance to shine, especially since the Guardians franchise has always been about expanding Marvel's cosmic storytelling. Even though he missed his shot in the movies, being tied to this new team in the comics keeps him relevant and positions him for a bigger future. And Marvel seems to know that fans haven't forgotten about him. Even in gaming, he's popped up in Square Enix's Guardians of the Galaxy, where players could find files referencing him and his mystical raptor amulet. It was a small Easter egg, but it was a reminder that Marvel hasn't shelved him completely. Now, to make things even more exciting, Marvel recently introduced a new Darkhawk, Connor Young, in the comics. Connor took on the mantle after discovering the raptor amulet, and his journey has been just as dramatic. He's dealing with multiple sclerosis in his civilian life, while also trying to live up to the expectations of being a superhero. Connor's story adds a fresh layer to the Darkhawk mythos, especially since it shows how the powers can heal damage when he reverts to human form. This almost makes him invincible, though it also raises questions about the cost of using the amulet. Connor's version of Darkhawk has already crossed paths with heroes like Miles Morales and even Captain America, which shows Marvel is serious about keeping the character involved in big storylines. This could also be laying the groundwork for how Darkhawk might eventually be introduced in the MCU. So, when you put it all together, Darkhawk feels like one of those characters Marvel has been quietly saving for the right moment. He has the cosmic connections to bring in the Shi'ar, the street-level history to team up with Spider-Man, and the team experience to blend into groups like the Avengers or Guardians. Even though he was passed over before, the timing feels better than ever for him to get his moment in the spotlight. In the end, Darkhawk is a character with a lot of potential, and fans are eager to see him finally step into a bigger stage. Whether it's in Vision Quest, a Nova project, or down the road in an X-Men storyline, his mix of gritty origins and cosmic-scale adventures make him the kind of hero Marvel can do a lot with. And considering how much Marvel loves to surprise audiences, it wouldn't be shocking at all if Darkhawk ends up being one of the next big names to join the MCU. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.